Good evening and welcome to the first manager workshop of the new year. This is Monday, January 12th, 2026. City Clerk Sitch, would you do the roll call for us, please?
Councilmember Cave.
Here.
Councilmember Juniman.
Here.
Councilmember Lee.
Present.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Here.
Mayor Abrams.
I'm here as well. Thank you very much. Council members, is there a motion to approve our agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Cave, seconded by Lee. The motion to approve the agenda. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. We have no unfinished business. We have one item of business tonight, the local option sales tax. And City Manager Sable, this is your topic tonight.
Thank you, Mayor and council members, and Happy New Year. Welcome to the first meeting of the year. It's off to a great start already. As you know, we over the past several months, we have been talking about some of the infrastructure that we have in the community that is aging and in need of some repair. And so we did a tour of some of our campus items so that you could see kind of firsthand some of the challenges that we're facing. We also had with regard to the Maplewood Community Center, YMCA, well, we had an exhaustive engineering and architectural study that showed some of the deficiencies in that. And the price tag, if you recall, for that to bring it to a modern standard with no enhancements was about $20 million of investment. That would put a significant strain on our ability to borrow that and just do a general levy for that. And so at the council's direction, we kind of explored some options. And we identified early on that one of the options that might exist that communities have used in other areas was the consideration of a local option sales tax. And so at the end of November, we talked about what a local option sales tax means, the general outline and the process for how it forms and how you can request one. And so I don't want to rehash a lot of that. I just will note that it requires an act of the legislature, a signature by the governor, further action by this governing body, and then ultimately an election and a referendum from the voters in the city of Maplewood. So it's an exhaustive process. But one of those components that's necessary to do that is to actually ask the legislature for what you want. And so part of the question that I think we'll frame up, and this is intended to be broad and informal, is A, do we want to consider a different source of revenues for making these investments in infrastructure and assets? And then B, if the answer is yes, then to what amount and which projects would you like to consider? There's no, I believe that the limit is no more than 5 projects possible. I'm not suggesting you have to pick 5, but that is the maximum that you could choose to do. And I will also know that there are some statutory deadlines that have to be met. So this is a timely decision has to be made. The requirement is that you notify the chairs and ranking members of the House and Senate Tax Committee no later than January 31st. And so we have plenty of time between now and then, assuming you all reach a consensus decision on yes or no, and then if it's yes, which types of projects. Included in your packet today is items that you have seen or heard of generally. The first is the local option sales tax analysis that was done by the University of Minnesota. Their team can extrapolate where sales come from and what we could potentially generate. And so the University of Minnesota has estimated that within the city of Maplewood, a half-cent sales tax would generate about $4.5 million. And of that $4.5 million, 60% would come from outside the city. So people traveling through and shopping in. I'll say God bless Costco, right? It is clearly a regional draw. It's a huge generator of revenue for us. We appreciate their location in the community because it actually could potentially benefit us. And so I say that is the amount that we could do. The second item that's in your packet is an analysis from Ehlers and Associates that estimates sort of what you could borrow then and what you could ultimately use that money for. Previous estimates that we put together included was a range of about $70 million. And I think Finance Director Joe Rubin, I would often say, right, that is the conservative estimate. That's sort of a standard. But we asked Ellers, what could you reasonably expect with some different sets of assumptions? And some of those are related to interest rate risk. Some of those are related to coverage factors, insurance on the bonds and those kind of proceeds, and said they would feel comfortable with a number of about 83.6. There is even one further that's even more aggressive. However, we're not presenting that today. So in your range of choices, I think it's reasonable to say you've got about $83.59 million available if the voters approved a local option sales tax. And then the last item is, again, this process for what you would do to obtain a local option sales tax authority. It outlines the steps. It's very prescriptive. Many communities have done this. In fact, right, probably more than 40, I would say. Probably, I think that's a conservative estimate. But most recently, the city of Roseville was the most recent one, in the neighboring communities who have pursued this. And so I just wanted to open it up for questions in terms of, we've been talking about this for several months, as is our sort of workflow in terms of how we talk about things. I also want to note that Todd Stone is with us in the audience. Todd works for a company called Wrap Strategies. They provide advice and communications advice to cities, counties, school districts, anybody who's willing to pay them for their services. But they do a really good job, and they are experienced in this very specific question about a local option sales tax. Just informally, I think Todd has probably worked on about 24 of them recently, in both successes and failures. So I think that, I mean, this is not a foregone conclusion. This is rigorous work that requires attention and understanding of what we're after. So with that, Mayor, that's kind of the high-level framing of what we're going to talk about tonight. We are going to take copious notes, and if a consensus emerges, we would bring something to you for consideration at the meeting on January 26th. But that is the framing, and so what I would suggest is you ask as many questions as you can. We will answer all of those questions in the moment, and then it would be helpful at the end if we could hear sort of your preferences, and then we can see if it would emerge as a clear indication, or if we should go back to the drawing board and start over. So I just will open it up to the body for discussion. So thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a really good framework that you just described for us to use as we talk about this. Council members, let's limit our discussion, at least initially, to questions so that we all have the table is set, that we all understand the same facts, and then we can talk about what our preferences are. But I think that makes more sense to me. So let's do that. The one question that came up, two questions that came up for me. You talked about the fact that we did the study on the community center, and we're looking at about $20 million in, I can't even really call them upgrades. It's simply a matter of maintenance on a building. But that isn't all at once. And I don't remember, was that over a period of 10 years? They were looking forward at what kinds of things will we need to repair in 5 years and in 10 years. And there were a number of things that we needed to do immediately, but it wasn't $20 million all at once. It's $20 million, that's what we're looking at. It's a very large building. It's an older, aging community center. So is it 10 years? Is that how long?
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Yeah, the answer is 10 years. There was a 10-year time horizon. They identified things that were sort of immediate infrastructure things that needed to be repaired, kind of a 5-year time horizon of things that were going to be deteriorating faster, and then ultimately within the envelope, a 10-year window to do all of that.
Okay. And Todd, if you want to come up to the microphone, I know Councilmember Cave is going to be next, but I have a question.
Please.
Sometimes it's good when we're analyzing issues to maybe look from the backside and kind of turn ourselves around to analyze the question. Mike made a good point. You've worked on at least 24 ballot questions. Not all of them have passed, which is, understandable. But if you could maybe summarize for us your observations about those ones that have failed. Sometimes it's nice to know that and look backwards in analyzing this. So
Sure.
Can you draw any conclusions for us on why things have not passed?
Absolutely. Council, thank you for having me join you this evening. We've actually worked on referenda for school districts, counties, and cities across the state for the past 20 years. So over about 140 referenda with local communities seeking some sort of tax, either a tax increase or a new tax to support public investments. Specifically, we've worked over almost 25 local sales tax referenda. When about a good plan goes before voters and sometimes doesn't get approved, we've found in the forensics that we'll do with our losses as well as our victories is that what it comes down to often are three factors. One, just fundamentally, residents didn't quite get it. They weren't quite sure why the proposal was being put forward now, or they had a question that just wasn't answered. So what happens is that they realize, well, I have some doubts here. There are a few things I don't know about it. I'll vote no this time, but I might vote yes for the next time a new plan comes around. That's often one of the most common phenomenon. Another factor can just be price point. It's the wrong cost at the wrong time for residents. We've certainly seen coming out of COVID, the economic challenges that many communities have and still have. That can factor in the decision. And another factor is just a lack of visibility from the city and city leaderships or county or school district, whatever the local unit of government may be, where there isn't a deep, consistent commitment to engage and answer residents' questions. Residents look to you as experts on what's happening in the community in terms of local governance, and they'll be looking to you for answers to their questions. And the better the city is prepared to engage residents, to give them the materials and information they need to answer those questions, the more likely they'll understand the project and the proposal put for them. And often that leads to a positive outcome at the ballot box.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much. Councilmember Cave, I know you have a question too.
You asked my first one, so now I'm going to go piggyback on that. That was a good question. My other question is, we're all new at this, and so we've got this grandiose idea. How can you tell us to start streamlining in our brains, our heads, the process of it? What are some goals we should be doing when we're doing this right away? Because it's going to happen pretty fast for us. We have to come up with ideas that we can sell to the legislation and, our people. What are some key things in the success that we should look at?
A few factors to consider. Going before lawmakers to get state authorization, they're going to want to see the regional benefit for these projects that you put forward. What's the regional impact of the investment? Because they recognize, the lawmakers recognize that a sales tax is paid by both visitors and residents. So what is the potential regional benefit for those communities around you who may actually be helping pay for these investments through their purchases in your city? So being able to explain the regional impacts and effects of your investments, not just the local benefits, will be really important. On the flip side, you'll want to, of course, make sure residents understand why local sales tax is being proposed to make these investments that benefit them. And of course, one of the common reasons why communities will pick a local sales tax over, say, an increase in the levy is just that. We're pretty unified across the state politically that no one likes a property tax increase. And a local sales tax, of course, spreads the burden of that investment, not just on your property owners, but those who come and visit too. So that's another one of the factors, and of course, making that clear. For your community messaging, obviously the local benefits will be more important. I don't know if that addressed exactly what you were asking, but if there's something specific about the process. But there are several steps along the way. If you get legislative authorization, you'll return as a body and then accept that authorization and decide whether you want to move forward and put something on the ballot. Over the summer, you'll decide what that ballot language will be, specifically to describe the investments. There are certain rules of the road that one project per question is what the state will allow. So you can't take like 3 very different projects and put them on one ballot question. There'll need to be 3 different questions, for example, or 2 questions per project.
I have a follow-up.
Sure.
So for an example, if we were to do, because we have a lot of parks in Maplewood, if we were to do, let's say, assist for parks, would we have to say each one in the process, or can we just use a covering, we're going to help the parks, and we decide later?
It's interesting. First propose what you think is what makes the most sense for what you're trying to accomplish as a community. But we have seen other jurisdictions propose park system improvements which might mean investments across multiple parks.
Okay.
Then we've seen other communities like Edina. They went forward with 2 distinct park proposals because they were very different kinds of investments in each park.
Okay.
And they were presented on the ballot separately, so it can vary.
Okay.
For public safety, sometimes a proposal will be focused on just one facility, and in some cases, it might be multiple facilities that support the police department, for example, or your
Okay.
fire department.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for being here tonight. My question to you is, with all your experience working in this industry, does it make more sense to have just one project that we are very keen on, we want to make sure this is successful, or historically, does it make more sense to have multiple projects and then giving the constituents an opportunity to pick what's most important for them? I'm thinking strategically, how do we work with our community? How do we best frame these projects that are important to the council, to the city?
Well, fortunately, you're not coming in cold, right? You've been talking to residents and engaging in all sorts of ways about their priorities or where they'd like to see new city investments emerge, whether it's with the community center or other projects as you go along. My advice is always to prioritize accordingly. If you have a project that as a body you think is the most important, then that's your first ballot question. That's the first project that lawmakers should see at the state level. That should be the first project that voters see come next November if you go that far in the process. So I would certainly start there. One thing about having to do an individual project per ballot question, which is state law, that will be how this will have to play out. The more questions that are on a ballot, we've discovered, it's well documented, what we call kind of ballot fatigue, where even those who will support local investments, they'll see that first question and that cost and say, okay, I'll vote for this. This seems good to me. Then they'll get to a next question, and then we'll say, well, do I want to do another question, another investment? Maybe. And basically how that translates is that if we see about an erosion of anywhere from 3 to 8% of support from question 1 to question 2 to question 3. So keep that in the back of your minds too when you think about how many projects do we want to put on the ballot. It's not quite the same as like going to the grocery store and just do we want to get fruits or vegetables today or both.
Thank you.
Council members, are there any other questions? All right. Now we get to discuss this. There are no other questions.
I suspect there may be more.
They may pop up, but at least we've set the table so that we all have, an understanding and had a chance to ask some initial questions. This, to me, is a really great opportunity for our community. And we have done a lot of talking about, I'll start with the public safety building. We know that it is about, I think, $35 million. The general thought about that is that we cannot expect the legislature to give us $35 million. That's not going to happen. We can, there is an idea about matching that. So basically, if you cut that in half, 17.5 million or let's just say 17 million, it would be certainly a gesture to show that we have skin in the game on this. I think as a council, we have all discussed the importance of having a public safety training center where police, fire, our social workers can all train together because they don't have that ability now. And that is absolutely critical for their safety, for them to be able to train together in a location. And we have the property. We're fortunate that we've got the property here in Maplewood. Right now, it is only a fire training center, but all of the infrastructure is there, the water, the electricity, all of that. And so in my way of thinking, that certainly is a project that if that's going to happen, then we are going to have to come up with $17 million. And since this is a regional asset, since this would be used by many other departments as well, that we can't expect that other communities are going to be coming up with this money. It's located here in Maplewood. And so that certainly is going to be a priority for me, that we get that building built. Given the nature of what we ask our public safety officers to do on a daily basis, we need to be able to make sure that we are providing the best possible training for them. So in looking at that, I certainly would support going forward with a local option sales tax to fund the public safety building, to expand it. And that would certainly show, I think it would be very persuasive and compelling for the legislature to know that we are taking this on ourselves and we're asking for their help so that we can get across that finish line. That's what it's going to take. So that's my number one. Number two, excuse me, we know we have to do something with the community center. We know that it is an aging building. We know that it is, we know from the survey that we did that it is considered a valuable asset in our community. It was interesting for me to learn that, the majority of people who come to our community center are not necessarily residents, which interestingly enough is about the same split that we learned when we did a survey of the use of our nature center. That it was a 60-40 split in terms of 60% of the people who enjoy it they're not residents of Maplewood. The community center, I think certainly meets that regional benefit component, and it's something that we can't tax our way out of this. This is an aging building. We need to find some creative ways, and quite frankly, just putting the $20 million that's necessary over the next 10 years to replace the HVAC system and to, take care of new windows and the things that aging buildings have. If we spend $20 million, we just get the same old building. And in my mind, that building, I questioned kind of a long time ago the basic design of it. It's not, I think it needs to be repurposed. It was built at a time when a lot of people were playing basketball. They're not playing basketball like they used to. We already know that there were some water infiltration problems, and so we need to take care of the basketball court area. But really looking at this, $20 million is going to get us the same building, but with new windows and an HVAC system and the things that you normally replace on a building anyway. It is something that is it's certainly beloved in our community, and we have the ability to do something really quite amazing there and to actually repurpose it, where we could do some thinking and engage our community about having community gathering spaces, having places where, I know the new building that they put up in Woodbury, they have an indoor park for kids. We could do a number of different things, and I think when you're looking at this kind of money, up to $83.6 million, take off, if you back out the $17 million for the Public Safety Department, we still have quite a bit of money and could come up with a completely redesigned community center that would live into the future, and it would be redesigned for our use today. That it would be accessible, that there would be new uses that our community would be able to determine going forward. How do we want to use this building? It's really kind of an exciting proposition because it's a beautiful piece of land. We know that we have some upcoming maintenance on the building because it's an aging building, but we have an opportunity to do something really new and different. So those are my first two, and I don't know, 1 and 2 or whichever order, but those are the first two priorities that I see. And then we still have other opportunities, I think. Certainly, I would never think about going with 5 questions. I think, that 3 to 8% ballot fatigue as you expand the questions. we certainly don't want to wind up in that kind of a situation. I think 1 and 2, we have had lots of discussions about. I feel really comfortable that those would be excellent projects to go forward with. In looking at some other opportunities, and I want to hear what the rest of the council thinks about this, we have an aging nature center that, it is a beautiful piece of land. There is a very small building there. The footprint for parking, I think there's only 12 parking spaces there. And, we have some footprint limitations as to the property. And, we really haven't, other than going down there and taking a tour, we really haven't talked about what would be the future use of the nature center. I don't know. That's something that I think we would have to engage our community on. We certainly could enhance the trails and do some of those kinds of things, but other than that, I don't feel that we have enough clarity on what we might be able to do there. We haven't studied it, we haven't asked the community, we haven't looked, are there other options in terms of adding additional property? When you only have 12 parking spaces, you can't build a much bigger building because nobody can park anywhere. And we're right basically in the neighborhood there, and we don't want people parking in the neighborhood. So I think I don't believe that, in my mind, that we have enough information about what we could do with the nature center. That might be something that we have to look further into and get some additional information. In terms of the parks, I think that certainly we know that our parks are a huge asset in our community. And in looking at that, Edina had 2 specific parks, 2 specific ideas on what they wanted to do. We don't necessarily have that yet. We don't have that information. And I think we need to collect more information about that. I know we've got our Parks Master Plan, but we really haven't explored that very much. So I guess I want to hear what the rest of the council has to say about the Nature Center, also about what are you thinking, just in terms of the parks. So with that, maybe, does anyone want to have their light on? Do you want to go first and talk about this? I don't see any lights on.
Sure. Nick, do you want to go first?
Councilmember Villavicencio, your thoughts?
Thank you, Mayor. I will have to say, I think I align with you very much about the community center. I think, as we went and gone and seen it, and know about the challenges that we face there, I think that's a gem for our city that we have to prioritize. The other priority of mine is the nature center, and along those lines of what I'm thinking is, because I understand that the restrictions of the parking and everything that we have, but maybe we could expand it to include more generally the Parks Department in saying how could we improve the walkability or trail system, which would include maybe the Nature Center, because I think the Nature Center is still a gem for our city. I think that we need more walkability and connectability in the south end, connecting the Nature Center to something. So I think there's potential there, but like you said, there's a lot of unknowns that we don't know. But I think in this situation, there's a lot of unknowns that we don't have. But that's where I would sit. I would like to see, obviously the community center's huge priority, but then the nature center, but along the nature center, like some sort of trail, walkability, connectability situation.
What are your thoughts on the public safety building?
Obviously, I'm extremely supportive of our public safety department, and I want us to have the best training possible, and so I'm not against it.
Okay. Anyone else? Councilmember Cave.
I guess I'll start out with mine. I'm 100% for the public safety. I think having a matching is, like you said, skin in the game is going to be a great thing because it shows that we can put that money, and that's going to make a huge difference with our community and regionally. I mean, that's a huge regional win right there that you can talk about, and we can bring in a lot of. There's so many things that are exciting, and talking to the chief, it's already 2 years past, so there's going to be even more new exciting things to bring to it. And we're going to bring people from all over to come to it, and it's really important. We talked about embedded social workers, and we got a big jump start on it, but it seems like we need a place to train them, and I think this would be great because so many cities need them and we need more of them, and this would give a good jump to the embedded social workers. My second one, I think, priority-wise, here's the deal. Community center, I have a lot of questions on. I don't think it is worth fixing as is. I know we've asked people about it with questions that were kind of, people like it, but we didn't say, are you willing to put in 20 million to just keep it the same, 40 million? There's a lot of questions out there for people. I have questions about the architect that we were gonna hire, or that we did, to see what they said about it. Whether it's something we should continue on that space, or if we should look bigger. And to me, kind of encompass the community center, because it's community, into something like the parks. Now here's the thing with parks, and putting up bigger community buildings like Wakefield down on the south end in our parks, having community gathering spaces, not just in North Maplewood. Because the hard thing about it's just for North Maplewood. And I know people from the south can, but they don't. And I think we need to get the South Maplewood more community orientated by giving them, something like the Wakefield buildings down there in the South Parks, because those parks are beautiful down there. People love them. And they would go to them even in the winter time if we had buildings to go to. So my second one is really parks, and it encompasses the umbrella of parks, because I wouldn't like to say certain parks get fixed, but I would like to say turning parks into community spaces would do the community center thing. And I know it might not be the favorable, but right now that's just what I'm thinking. I just don't know if the community center is gonna be a buy-in for everybody, and I just wanna have solutions. If we don't, do we have parks covered so we can do something at the parks to make community space? So that's kind of what I'm thinking right now.
So just for a point of clarification.
Yeah.
Are you not in favor of, I
Just a
understood you to
community
say
center?
that the $20 million
Yeah.
just gets us
Yeah.
where,
Yeah.
it just replaces the normal course of aging
Yes.
parts of the building.
Yeah.
But investing much more than that. I think one question I want to ask Mr. Sable is about the architect that we were going to retain to take a look at what is the potential for the community center.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I appreciate, I should have mentioned that early on. So at the December council meeting, you authorized me to enter into an agreement with an architectural firm. The city interviewed 5 firms. There was a firm called LSE that was identified as the best choice. They had done significant work in doing community centers most recently, and they also had extensive experience in working with YMCA's. And we also felt like their approach to community engagement seemed to be more authentic and more high touch, which I think at this point, when we have projects that a lot of people know about, and then I think they want to have a lot of input in. So we felt like LSE offered a really good connection to the community, and they'd be a more trusted voice in getting community feedback. And so we are signing that contract on Wednesday. So they are eager to start work, and they will be starting work on Thursday. And it will start with interviews with every member of the city council, so we can flesh out, like, what do you like about the community center building? What do you see as its future? They will also do some trend analysis about what are they seeing in the marketplace. So what is the future of community spaces? You often hear, we often talk about community centers used to be about gyms, and it used to be about swimming. And that model has shifted as we've done that. And so relying a little bit on their expertise. The other thing that I think at least stood out, and I'll speak just personally, they talked about the location of the community center is connected to this incredible trail network, right? It's half a block away, maybe a block away on the Gateway Trail, and you wouldn't necessarily know it if you hadn't paid attention. And so they talked about ways to integrate the lake, the pond, right? Lake, pond, outside. Pond, it's more of a pond, but it is, how do you connect that to the trail so as people are using the Y in the community center, that it actually connects to the other sizable infrastructure investments that we have. So there's part of the elements why they were so attractive. And so they will start in earnest on Thursday. And one of the things that I think is a challenge right now is a lot of times when you put forward a local option sales tax project, you have a plan that is fully fleshed out, and you walk in and you know that this is going to be this thing. We actually, starting in the opposite, we have a dollar amount first, and then we'll have to back into it. Lots of communities do it this way, and I don't know if, Todd, you want to talk about your experience in the city of Rochester and what this came up just recently. You can tell the story far better than I can.
Well, I think just in general, it's difficult for a lot of communities to plan out these sort of projects and investments to the very detail and to the very dollar, in part because that takes a certain amount of upfront resources to make that happen. You've taken a first step by hiring an architect. So in a lot of cases, what happens is that communities will have to, have a good concept, good estimates from independent experts, but recognizing that the real planning sometimes occurs after the funding source is approved, because it would almost be irresponsible to start spending hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on pre-planning for a project that may not have ultimately a stable funding source, and that's what you're seeking with the local option sales tax. So that's, I think, broadly what you're working through. In terms of Rochester itself, their challenge was that they had multiple investments and that they were trying to make, including a new sports complex. And in that case, they had a good plan, but we also had record inflation. So they had to adjust when they were going to phase in their investment. And that is just one of the many unknowns and factors that you'll be planning for long after you might have a funding source approved. And that's why sometimes you're starting with a dollar figure and then figuring out from there. I hope that was helpful.
It's good to know. That's good to know. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Great conversations, and it's good to hear kind of where everyone what you are all thinking about. I think for me, the number one priority, I'm 1 and 2, I'm with the mayor on this one, it's kind of 1 and 2 for me. And Councilmember Cave, you brought up some really good point about some possibilities down in South Maplewood. I think those are some of the assets that they are missing down there, our community gathering spaces. We have beautiful parks. I would love to learn more in the future about what some of that looks like, because we do need some of that down in South Maplewood. The Maplewood Community Center is the number one thing that comes to my mind. I would not be in favor of spending $20 million just to get it back to, to do the general maintenance on it. I think that's a waste of money, and I think we can do so much more if we're really going to put some funding towards it. I think we need to really make the Maplewood Community Center a place where people really want to gather. I don't think there's anything locally here in this area that provides such facility. And so if we're going to be doing it, I would like us to have a really good, thorough conversation about how do we make that a state-of-the-art facility. But an important component for me on that is I think we need to be very clear, if we're going to be putting that kind of funding into it, to really define what community center means. This has to be an asset, and this has to be something that is accessible to all of our community members, not just Y members. And I think that's the place where if I wanted to walk in and I just wanted to use a space, I have to be able to use that if I'm going to be putting that kind of money into it. So we really have to be clear about how we define that component. I do see that this is a great asset in the city of Maplewood. I think people really see that this is also a good asset. I think that's why in our survey, people responded very well to this as a community center. So that would be my priority, number one priority. I think that will have the most impact on the people in our community, winter, fall, spring, and all year round. Public safety, the mayor, council member, you guys have all mentioned, I think that is a critical, important component of our city. Unfortunately, we cannot wait for monies from the federal government to come to us. We have to take things into our own hands, and I do agree with all of you that this is a regional asset. You know, Maplewood does it differently, and if people can come here and do it the way we do it and train the way we train, you know, other folks can have great public safety departments like we do here in the city of Maplewood. So I would definitely support putting some funding towards the public safety training facility. I would like to discuss more about, you know, what does that look like in terms of partnership from other cities, though, so that way it's not just Maplewood that's maintaining it long term. You know, what type of partnerships can we have to ensure that that asset in 20 years from now, it's not just the responsibility of Maplewood, but then the regional efforts then can help take care of that, so we can maintain that to keep it state of the art in 20 years and not just relevant now. The other component is the Maplewood Nature Center. I do have, I admit it's in my backyard. I have a soft spot for it. It's beautiful. But I think my concern around that is, I agree with you, Mayor, on that one. I don't think we have clarity yet on what we want to do with that. I mean, if we have more clarity on that, I think we can do so much more with that place. We bounce ideas around about maybe having other programs come into the facility and using that facility, you know, how do we turn that into something that makes sense before we put any money into it? I would like us to have a better fleshed out plan, or maybe some proposals already from our community that would be there long term, so it's not something that we're building just for the short term. But those are the three things that I think are definitely important. But number one and number two, Maplewood Community Center and public safety training facility, those two are definitely important assets in our city.
Thank you. Mr. Sable, do you want to explain, you may not be aware that we have a JPA with the public safety training facility. Do you want to explain what that is? Well, the building is located in Maplewood. We have a joint powers agreement, and it is operated, can you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and council members. So the current East Metro Public Safety Training Facility is controlled by a four-party group. So Maplewood, North St. Paul, Oakdale, and Lake Elmo Fire. And we jointly schedule and plan, and the city of Maplewood takes the bulk of that work. But it's a shared entity. If and when that facility is expanded, we would actually have to kind of create a new operating agreement. And I will state my own bias. If the city of Maplewood is going to pay for presumably half of the site, we would control all of the scheduling and pieces up there. We might have partners that help us, but primarily that would fall to city of Maplewood staff. And what we would do then is set up sort of a schedule and a billing structure where we would, if a neighboring agency wanted to use our facility for training, they would then pay us a portion of that fee to use that space. The revenue that we would get for that would cover operating expenses like heating and cooling and water and sewer and those kinds of infrastructure items. But it would not be for the purposes of making money. It would just try to be to cover our cost as generally a break even, but it would also not include capital replacement. It would just be operating replacement to break even. So it will never make money. It is not intended to make money, but it is intended to be a great space for people to train well, jointly with police, with fire, with their embedded social workers. There's not a lot of training facilities out there. So the current model is one thing. I think if our investment is significantly more, I think we would probably change that model. And I've talked to Public Safety Director Beardeman and Chief Mondor about, we might have to do things differently, but that would be the basic model is operate it like essentially as a landlord and rent it out or lease it out on a basis with neighboring agencies, of which we know there are at least 27 agencies who use it regularly, and so I think there's an appetite for it. So I hope that answered that question.
It did. And we also have letters from at least those 27 agencies, and I think even more, don't we? Mm-hmm. Letters of support that have been submitted to the legislature in support of funding this particular facility. So it is definitely a regional asset. Councilmember Juniman.
Well, what all the rest of you said. Basically, I have the same three. The public safety training facility that's a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. For what it does and for the fact that the legislature is interested, we just need to have some money where we match. that would be ridiculous not to, so I don't think I need to spend any more time on that. I think it's a top priority. The MCC, I agree with the people who have spoken before me. There's absolutely no point in spending $20 million to end up with the same thing we had before it started to fall apart. That doesn't make any sense at all. So we need a direction to go, and the price tag will determine, I suppose, how far we go. But I think if we get a direction from people who know how to build a community center, how to design a community center so it's more welcoming to begin with. If you look at the layout of the building, it isn't even welcoming. The two entrances are, I mean, people who are coming here going, where do you go in? I mean, you know, it's really needs a total overhaul. So if we're going to do that, and we want one, and we want it to be something, that's what we have to look at is the long-term, how will it be a true community center, because it isn't right now. And yes, the nature center. There are some things I think we could do without redoing the building before that point that might help, but accessibility is an issue. And I was talking once before with Nikki about this down at the west end where the original road was that went in there. That, I mean, I don't know what kind of condition it's in, but we could look at, is there a way for more accessibility, and is there any way at all to have any parking down at that end? I don't know. But it's a thought. But I think that's a regional asset. It's just that we are so landlocked, it becomes a problem. But if we could know better how we could coordinate with surrounding entities to be using it, that would kind of help direct us in what we could try to build or try to put in some kind of format that more people could actually use it. That's what the problem is now. We're going around in a circle like we have one foot nailed to the floor. So we kind of have to find out what is possible and by the land that's there, but also what would be possible by the amount of money it would take. But those are my top three priorities.
Okay. Mr. Sable.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, for the conversation. I think this has been really helpful. I wanted to, the Wakefield building is the most recent park investment that we've had in the community. And you know my fascination with numbers, and so I have a whole chart here. The building is about 3,400 square feet, and it's about $2.9 million when it was built. The Nature Center, as it exists today, is about 3,000 square feet, so pretty similar size. So it seems reasonable if you add a little bit of inflation that you could build a Wakefield-like building at the community center for about $4 million.
At the nature
Give or take some math. And I think while I don't know that it's going to be precise, I think it's fair to maybe extrapolate that if you wanted to do a second park, you could say, we could do a second park for about $4 million. And so if you use that kind of back of the napkin logic, of which I'm making Joe nervous by doing my math that way, but I think it's reasonable to say, right, if a park and trail connection piece were important and you wanted to do two of them, it would be about $8 million. If you wanted to do three of them, it would be 12. I say all that to say, whatever you decide, the upper limit is that 83.6 million. So you would keep subtracting, and whatever you would have left would be the remainder. And you could work with that, and that's not unreasonable to sort of approach it that way. It's maybe not ideal sequencing, but you end up at the same spot either way. So food for thought, and I will follow. I mean, and I'll clearly follow up with a conversation and some written summaries of here's what we heard, and this is kind of the. I know everyone here is taking good notes, and we'll compare tomorrow. So I just wanted to offer that as a perspective.
Thank you, that's helpful. Councilmember Cave.
I just have a question, and I don't know if Todd can help us or its staff or you guys can answer it for me. But just being here in Maplewood for, a long time. I guess I've been here longer than I thought. Almost 30 years, if over. I was around, Kathy was the mayor, when the community center first came together. and it was kind of a contentious thing. There's been a lot of not liking the community center, just a lot of off-putting from residents. Now, we're putting something like this on the ballot that still has a bad taste in many, many residents. How do you sell it to them when you're telling them they have a sales tax, even though it's going to be from other people, but they're also paying it? How do you get a buy-in on that? I have a really, I want, anything we decide, I want to go through. So I want to see how we're going to get around something like that. That's my big concern with the community center, is the multiple people who still live here who are like, no, we did it once, they don't have a vision to do the same thing twice. Same spot, you're doing the same thing that they saw and they voted no for. So,
I would suggest that the survey tells us something different than that.
but the
I
survey
think
was how many people?
Well, but let me just finish
Okay.
my statement that the majority of people that come to the community center are people from not necessarily Maplewood.
Yeah.
And I would say that what I learned from the survey, that is that people see that community center as an asset. And it is, what people do not like about it is the fact that the floor is torn up, that the design doesn't make a whole lot of sense, that it was designed 36, almost 40 years ago, however, I forget how long it was, that the design didn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, I think that we would be looking at a very different story today if the question was, do we want to put in a brand-new community center? That, I think, would be a really tough sell today. But we have this asset, and we know we have to do something just because we own it. In terms of building maintenance, everybody who has any kind of property knows you've got to put in windows and an HVAC system and all of those kinds of things. So I would disagree with you. I don't think that people have a bad taste in their mouth about the community center. I think that they're looking at us today and saying, this is now an asset that we have, but it is an asset. What are we going to do with that into the future? That's my thinking.
And
about it.
fair enough, but like you said, 60-40, the people, 60% are from out of Maplewood that go there. That means, the 40%. So
That
you
will be
have,
paying for it.
yeah, so you just have less, when they filled out the survey too, it was, is it an asset? But we didn't say, is it an asset if you're gonna go pay 20 or 40 million? Do you want that? We didn't go that deep. So I'm trying to get a conversation here because that's a huge sell that we're gonna have people saying, okay, now we're gonna do 40 million. Who's gonna go out there and sell it without putting up signs and being able to, this isn't something it's happening fast.
You bet. I think only because the process, the notification at the legislature is fast, the rest of it is all about education and discussion and talking to the community and what does the community really want? Because in looking at it, if we're going to keep the community center, we have to pay $20 million over 10 years. We would have to levy for that or tear it, other options, tear it down, which, is that really what our community is telling us? I don't think that that's what the survey said. So all of this is a process, and certainly we need to engage with our community about how they see that building and the use of that building in the next 20 years. So we have only about 3 options in my mind. Maybe there are more council members, I don't know. We do a local option sales tax, and we improve that and make it a true community building based on the input from our community. Number 2, okay, we've got a building that we are going to have to pay $20 million, and where are we going to get that money? We're going to look to Joe Rube and ask him about, we've got to increase the levy, and then who's paying for that, only to maintain the building? We're not getting
100%
anything
get it.
fancy.
Yeah.
Or, the other alternative, if the council, if our, if we aren't going to levy for it, then we dispose of the community center. I mean, we have limited options here.
Yes, yes.
So, Councilmember Lee.
No, think, Mayor, you brought up some really good points there, and to your piece of it, Councilmember Cave, I think 20 years ago, I don't know what the engagement component was, but I think.
40.
Yeah. Well, 40 years ago. I don't know what that was like 40 years ago. But I think our staff right now, we have staff that understands the importance of what community engagement means for us now, for our council now. I think this is an opportunity for our council, for our current city, to do some really intentional engagement and understanding what does the community center mean. Because I have heard some comments from residents about the community center. I'll through the years being on the council, but I think we could do it differently. And I really see that our community can see the community center as an asset. But we have to be very intentional in how we do the engagement, and we have to be very intentional in our design concepts. And so if we really could bring people to the table and give them an option to help us design this next, what that iteration looks like, I think there could potentially be some buy-in in what that could look like for our city. But, letting it being as it is, I think it hurts us more, than to recreate what does that look like? Because it is totally different from what it is 40 years ago. So I see a lot of potential with the community center.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and one other comment is, I would love for us to do it backward, where 60% of Maplewood is using it and 40% is external. Because I think when we intentionally design it, we have the potential to do it that way. And we really have to stand by, what does a community center mean? I mean, I remember what a community center meant when I was growing up. Like, we have to turn that into what it was. I mean, we have to really stay focused on that piece.
Did you want to ask Todd to respond to your question? We've got a little bit of time.
Just 2 points to add. In terms of how you present it to the public and through looking at it through a communications and engagement lens, I would take on those criticisms and those deficiencies directly. The current community center has a lot of challenges. It has a lot of limitations that keeps the city from providing support and amenities and programming that could support quality of life. Demonstrate and explain in a fact-based way how this plan will improve the community center and address those challenges and those criticisms directly. I think that's a really important part of the equation. And then you can't sell in the sense that state law doesn't want cities to use public resources to sell a tax. But what you can do is talk about, specifically this body can talk about your vision for the future, your vision for this community center and what you want it to be. And then, as I've already said so well, invite the public to be a part of that visioning process. And that'll be a really important part of the equation as well.
Does that help? Council members, any other questions or comments? Mr. Sable.
Thank you for the dialogue. This is, when we put together council packet items, we actually, we think it's going to go well, but this couldn't have gone better. I mean, it was incredible insights and perspectives. And so staff has some work to do. And what I'll suggest is that we will put together a summary and get out an email distribution. And we'll also include it on the city's website too, just to kind of summarize the conversation about what we heard you say and what some of the various options would be. And then what I'll do is, in conversations with you in the intervening 2 weeks, is to say, here are a range of what I heard was 4 choices, and we'll frame them up, option A, B, C, and D. And then you can have this robust dialogue a second time on the 26th. And hopefully, I think by that point, we'll have some more concrete numbers, a range of options that are fully supported. And I just so you know, the deadline is, the city council meeting is on the 26th of January. The deadline is the 31st. You should not worry about that quick turnaround. The bulk of the letter is already drafted. What we're just missing is those last little points to include as a placeholder. So we will clearly, without question, meet the deadline that's outlined. And then we've also spoken to our lobbyist who is working on drafting bill language that would do the same thing. So I am not concerned about timing, even though it is tight.
One last question. We already know the $17 million number. We don't know any number as to what it might look like for the community center. Will the architects be able to give us a number with options, so that then we can take a look at, is there additional funding that might be available for a Wakefield building in South Maplewood, or something at, additional walkability at the or at the nature center. We need more definition on numbers. When can we maybe expect that?
The contract that we have with our with the architecture firm LSE calls for preliminary numbers in April. So they are prepared to work very quickly. And I will say that one of the benefits of working with a firm that does this work all the time is there are some general guidelines. Like, for example, a remodeling project costs about $400 a square foot. And if you know how many square feet you're remodeling and you times that by 400, you get a pretty good approximation. New construction is a different animal. It's slightly significantly higher. But so we'll have numbers, clear numbers by April. And the other thing I'll just say, and this is, I may be getting too far ahead, but the local option sales tax doesn't have to be the only source of money that goes in the community center. We could, in theory, go to the legislature and ask for bonding support in future years. It doesn't have to be just a one-time piece. We can actually request congressionally directed spending. We can ask for state bonding. We haven't done that because the training center has been the number one priority, and it's been first in line for a long time. But it doesn't preclude us from building a request ongoing in years 2 and 3 and 4 and 10. So we can continue to think bigger if that's the desire of the council.
It's very helpful, thank you. Councilmember Lee, do you have one final question?
Yes, I just had a memo really quick. I don't know if this is the right spot, but, I think Councilmember, the thought of maybe putting some sort of building like the Wakefield building down in South Maplewood, I think that's, I'd like to see, I don't know if it's the right place, but maybe staff can maybe provide some options of what park potentially. I know there was a lot of interest from people when we were talking about the ponds, about potentially keeping that building down there as a community center. So I think it is something that is, that's wanted down in that area. So maybe some recommendations from staff of what that looks like.
Great discussion. Council members, we will be discussing this multiple times through the next 10, 11 months. Thank you all for your input and sharing your wisdom. I think that ultimately we will do some really amazing things for our community. Thank you, Todd, for being here and for kind of helping us to shape this. And Mr. Sable, thank you for your help as well. So with that, council members, we are adjourned, and we'll be back in 5 minutes to start our council meeting.